Welcome everyone to a second session of Gita in a Nutshell course. We are creating this recording for those who were not able to come in person, as well as those who would like to recap the topic again and refer to it later on in the future. Of course, in this recording, we cannot replicate everything that exactly happened in the in-person session and the wonderful experience that we get when we gather in person and discuss the Bhagavad Gita, but we will try to replicate at least the topics as much as possible. So I'll begin with a small prayer. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this is a prayer of gratitude, expressing gratitude to our teachers who have brought to us this divine wisdom. First of all, who is worthy of our gratitude? First of all, it is Lord Krishna who spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Deep, deep gratitude to him. Then our deep gratitude to Arjun for asking these beautiful questions to Lord Krishna, which enabled this wonderful dialogue, which has been relished for eons by so many generations of people. Then our deep gratitude to all the great teachers who have preserved this pristine message of the Gita and brought it to us. Our deep gratitude to this chain of temples called ISKCON that has enabled us to come together and study the Bhagavad Gita. Our deepest gratitude to the founder of ISKCON who brought this message of Lord Krishna and humbly and sincerely attempted to spread it all over the world, and thus started this chain of temples called ISKCON. And our deepest gratitude to each one of you who have taken so much interest in diving deeper into the Bhagavad Gita. Personally, I also get to grow so much from it. So I would like to personally express my gratitude to each one of you. So let's begin with our topic for today. I'll just share my screen. We have some interesting videos as well today to watch. Okay. So our today's topic for today is life, our existence beyond death. Basically, life after death, fact or fiction. So before we enter into our topic for today, we will just recap the first session, which was about our search for happiness. We saw that everyone wants to be happy, practically everyone. Not just us human beings, but even the animals. Everyone wants to be happy. But we saw that we are not actually happy all the time. We do face obstacles to our pursuit for happiness. And in this connection, we saw that there are two categories of problems. Some problems are relative. It may be a problem for me, but not for someone else. For instance, the stock price of some company going down. Yeah, people working for that company do suffer, but some other company is happy because of that. Some competitor, they become happy. So it's a relative problem. But then there are problems that come in the category of absolute problems. And what's the definition of absolute problems? One, they are common to all. Two, nobody wants them. And three, nobody can avoid them. And the Gita points us to these four absolute problems. And what are they? Birth, old age, disease, and death. Now, old age, disease, and death is certainly something we can all appreciate. But birth is something that may take us some time to appreciate why that's one of the absolute problems. It will become clearer when we discuss the cycle of birth and death and how we are caught up in it. And then besides these four problems, there's the tapatre or threefold miseries. And what are they? Adhyatmik, miseries caused by our own body and mind. Then Adhi Bhautik, miseries caused by others around. It could be other living beings like mosquitoes or some violent animals. It could be other human beings as well. And then Adi Daivik, miseries caused by some natural calamities or disturbances. So, yeah, birth, old age, disease, death, plus tapatre. Together, this forms the package of absolute problems as the scriptures define. And these problems do become obstacles in our pursuit for happiness. Then we discussed in this connection to our search for happiness, we discussed the specialty of human life. What is it that makes the human species special? Is it our sophisticated ways of eating in nice restaurants? Uh, or is it our sleeping on mattresses and couches? Or is it our human way of romance? Using so many things that uh, try to enhance that romance? Or is it our defense systems, nuclear missiles, AK-47 guns, and so on? Is it these four things that really make the human species stand apart? No, not really. We saw one beautiful verse from, I think it's from Mahabharata, that says, Ahara nidra bhayamaithunam cha samanyametat pashubhirnaranam dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesho dharmena hina pashubhih samana. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, these four things are common to both the species, to both humans as well as non humans. But what is it that makes the human species stand apart? It is the ability to inquire spiritually. And one very important question that comes up in a spiritual inquiry is, why am I suffering? Even though I would like to stop all suffering, even though I would like to be happy all the time. In fact, the scriptures inform us that not just everyone is looking for happiness, but everyone is looking for happiness all the time. And everyone is looking for not small, tiny quantities of happiness, but everyone is looking for oceanic quantities of happiness and all the time. So we can remember these three things. One, everyone is looking for happiness. Two, everyone is looking for happiness all the time. It's not that we are looking for happiness only sometimes, but rest other times we are intentionally pursuing miseries. We are looking for happiness all the time. And third, we are looking for not tiny quantities or puny quantities of happiness. We are looking for oceanic quantities of happiness. So, given this, why am I suffering? This question, animals, it's rarely seen that an animal can ask this kind of a question. In fact, in my understanding, we don't have any example. Unless, yeah, there are some rare cases where this may happen. But in general, it doesn't happen. But human beings can certainly make this inquiry. This is a spiritual inquiry. And that's what makes the human species stand apart from the non-human species. And that's the specialty of human life. And then the next section that we discussed in the last session was, are we looking for happiness in the right place? We saw that the scriptures are well-wishers. We consider the scriptures as divine revelations. And they are very benevolent toward us. And whatever the scriptures inform us is for our own good. And if the scriptures see that the human society is not moving in the right direction, they point out emphatically, no, please don't go in that direction. You will not be happy going in that direction. Go in this direction. This is what will make you happy. So, are we looking for happiness in the right place? In this connection, we saw that the most common form of looking for happiness is through the five senses. We have the sense of touch, the sense of seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and yeah, as we discussed, touch. So, through these five senses, we gather knowledge about our surroundings. But besides knowledge about our surroundings, we also gather pleasure that comes from external surroundings. We try to uh, take in pleasurable items through these five senses. And usually, most of the times, that's what our search or pursuit for happiness boils down to, just trying to gratify the senses. So, in this connection, we discussed two Sanskrit terms, Indriya Bhog, Indriya Sambhog, or Indriya Tripti. Putting it in plain English, we could just simply use the words sense gratification or sensual pleasures. Either of them could be used. So the scriptures point out that this is not the real platform where we can find happiness. Real happiness is something much deeper, something coming from within. So that is true inner happiness. And surprisingly, ironically, this true inner happiness, it's much more readily available. We really don't have to work so hard and spend so much money to try to get this true inner happiness. And the scriptures give us wonderful spiritual techniques to unleash this true inner happiness and become truly happy in life. Now, what do we mean by inner happiness? Does it come from our heart that pumps blood throughout the body? Or does it come from our stomach that digests food? Or does it come from the kidneys or the liver? Or does it come from the intestines that process our fragrant food waste? No, that's not what the scriptures are pointing. Even though these organs that we just discussed, heart, liver, kidneys, and so on, even though they are internal to our surface, the surface of our body, but still they are external to our true inner being. And we are going to see today what is that true inner being, that true inner self. So in this connection, in the previous session, we saw this beautiful picture, a horse tied to a very thin and lightweight chair that the horse can easily run away with. But still, the horse thinks, no, I'm tied to it. How can I run away? And that's how our pursuit for happiness often ends up being. What is tying us to a thin chair that does not allow us to unleash our true potential to be happy? The preconceived notion that happiness is available only on the sensual platform. That is what blocks us from unleashing our true potential for spiritual happiness. And in this connection, we saw a beautiful video on the journey within. We'll quickly watch it again. It's a very inspiring video. Let me quickly open it up for you. Yeah, this video was created. One of my spiritual teachers wrote a book in 2016 called The Journey Within. And this video was created in connection with that. It's a very inspiring video, worth watching again and again. Let's listen to this.
We're all on a journey. Some of us are on a journey to acquire wealth. Others are on a journey to overcome misfortune. Some are on a journey to make life-changing discoveries. Others are on a journey of conquest and power. Some are on a journey to change lives. In India, there is a story that's often told that speaks about the nature of our journeys in this life. There is a deer that is enchanted by the smell of musk. Whenever this deer catches that scent, he searches to find its source. He looks here and there in the forest, hoping to find the origin of the scent, but he never seems to find the source. The problem is that the scent comes from the deer himself. I've come to the conclusion that all our desires and all of our longings, all the things that propel us on our respective journeys, arise from a single origin. We're searching for the love that lies dormant within each of us. Let's take the journey to find this love, the journey within.
Beautiful video, isn't it? So this video talks about our search for happiness and how true inner happiness is what can satisfy us truly. Okay, next. Now, we saw that we are all happiness-seeking beings, but who are we actually? Who is that real me, the real you, the real him, and the real her? Now, in this connection, let's consider three options, and you have to choose one of these three. Option one, we are definitely something beyond this mere combination of chemicals that constitute our body. Second option, no. Our existence simply comprises of chemicals. We are simply a bunch of chemicals, that's all. And all our symptoms of life and the feelings and emotions that we experience, they simply arise from chemicals. That's it. And option three, I'm not sure. It could be either of the above two. So please select one of these options before we proceed to the next session. Don't worry about being judged or anything. Whatever option you select, in today's session, we are going to see what is the Bhagavad Gita stance on it. It's okay whether we have any idea about it from before or not, but discussing this question can help us connect and go deeper into today's topic. Now, here we have a very nice, interesting activity. Please look for some picture of yours from childhood or from teenage and just bring it in front of you and ask someone around, show them your picture, and of course you are standing in front of them, and ask them this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most likely and 1 being least likely, how much do you think that this small kid in the picture was me in the past? And let's see what others say. So we did this activity in our in-person session. We formed pairs of 2 and we asked each member to give a rating for the other member's picture. Okay, so hope you found a picture of yours and hope you were able to get this activity done. Now next, here are some interesting questions for us to dive deep into. Now look at your own picture and ask yourself these questions. Am I still this same person? Probably yes. Our answer may be yes. Yeah, I feel like I'm the same person. Do I still look like I used to look in this image? No. We are completely different now. We look totally different. Do I still think the same? Most likely not. If you ask me, not. In childhood, my concerns may have been all my thinking uh, would revolve around how can I win the hide and seek game next time I play it with my friends, and so on. These were the thought processes in childhood. Do I still have the same desires, aspirations, and longings? Absolutely not. So, yeah, am I still the same person or am I a different person now? And if I am a different person now, what it is about me that has changed? So, these are some deep existential questions we can ask. And I intentionally did not include my own picture in the slides for fear that I may slip into self advertisement. Of course, our goal here is not self advertisement, but uh, promoting the message of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So, but still, if it helps dive deeper into the topic, I thought I should still include my picture, and I'll quickly show my picture to you. This was one picture I could find, and there's the other picture I was able to find. Now, how much do you think that small boy in that image, in those two images, looks like this person sitting before you right now? So I'll come back to our slideshow. Now, these are some of the deep existential questions we can ask. And now, earlier, science used to, the stance of science was everything, all our bodily cells change. They keep changing except the neurons that are responsible for various control and coordination activities. All the signals that the brain sends through the nervous system to various parts of the body. And the signals basically pass through neurons. So all cells of the body change except the neurons and the brain cells. This was the stance of science earlier, a few years back, a few decades back. But some recent studies reveal that even the neurons change every 7 years, as far as I know. Maybe some latest research may have superseded this understanding. But from my understanding, even science has come to this conclusion that uh, all our cells, including the brain cells and neurons and so on, everything changes within a span of around 7 years. Everything gets flushed out and it's replenished with newer cells. Every day we are eating food, newer cells are being generated, and all the dead cells are being washed away, flushed out. Now, given this, yeah, practically, the person currently sitting in front of you and you yourself, we are different. We are a different bunch of chemicals from what we were in our old pictures that we saw. Practically all cells have been flushed out. But still, we can identify with that person in the past. We say, when we look at that picture, we say, oh, this is me. Who is that real me? And that's what the Bhagavad Gita answers for us. Okay, yeah. So all the chemicals have been flushed out, but still, we feel like we are the same person. So who are we actually? This gives us a good background to enter into the Bhagavad Gita. Now we'll go into a brief introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Before we do that, I have some questions for you. Just pause and think for a while and come up with the answer for this. You may even do a Google search if you like. Which is the larger text that contains the Bhagavad Gita? And of course, the answer is pretty easy. It's the Mahabharata. Now, next question. Is it really very important for us to know this larger text in order to dive deep into the Bhagavad Gita? Now, here we may have mixed answers. Someone may say yes, someone may say no. So, let's consider an analogy that can help us understand this. Suppose there's a TV series that has 500 episodes in total, and someone is watching them regularly. And one particular episode, say episode 473rd, that episode has a wonderful message that is so uplifting that the person who is regularly watching this series recommends that episode to his or her friends. Hey, you also watch this. Now, yeah, the friend who gets this recommendation may think, oh, I'm certainly not going to watch this entire series of 500 episodes. But yeah, fine. If my friend is recommending this 473rd episode, let me watch it. Because that 473rd episode has a very nice universal message that's very uplifting for everyone. So this person who got this recommendation to watch episode 473 watches it and feels uplifted watching it. Now, while that person is watching this episode, certainly he or she may not be able to connect all the dots because all the names in this series of episodes, the person who is just directly watching 473rd episode doesn't know all the characters in this TV series. So naturally, the person won't be able to connect all the dots. But still, the message is very uplifting because the message is in a universal context. Now, why did we discuss this analogy? This is how the Bhagavad Gita is relevant to us. So, does it really matter whether we know the Mahabharata or not? Yes, in one sense, knowing Mahabharata certainly gives us the broader context and helps us understand the Gita. But do we really have to know the Mahabharata in order to derive some value out of the Bhagavad Gita? No. We can still dive into the Bhagavad Gita, whether we know Mahabharata or not. The message of Bhagavad Gita is universal and it can help us at all times. Though we may not be able to connect some dots if we don't know Mahabharata, but still it's not really essential to know Mahabharata. It can help us, but it's not really essential. Now, how does the Bhagavad Gita begin? Does someone know how many chapters are there in the Bhagavad Gita? Could you answer that for us? Just think about it for a few seconds and make a note of it. So yeah, here are some questions I have for you. How many chapters are there in the Bhagavad Gita? And the answer to this is 18 chapters. And who is the main speaker in the first chapter? And this is somewhat easier to answer. It's Arjun who is the main speaker in the first chapter. Arjun is expressing all his confusion before Krishna. Oh Krishna, I don't want to fight this battle. And he lists various reasons why he shouldn't fight the battle. And then next question, who is the main speaker of all the remaining chapters? This is an even easier answer. It's Lord Krishna who speaks the Bhagavad Gita. And in the end, Arjun's consciousness is again re-established in equanimity and he's ready to fight the battle and perform his duty. Now, how does the flow go? In the first chapter, practically Lord Krishna doesn't speak anything except for 2 or 3 words. Arjun asks Lord Krishna, Senayorubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya me chuta. Arjun asks Krishna, My dear Lord Achyuta, please take our chariot in the midst of both the armies. Before the battle begins, I would like to once see, have a look, and see all those men who have arrayed here on the battlefield, willing to please the evil minded son of Dhritarashtra. Who is that son of Dhritarashtra Arjuna is referring to? It's Duryodhan. So Arjun just wants to have a look at the enemy's army, and Lord Krishna, he takes the chariot in the midst of both the armies. And yeah, the chariot is somehow placed in such a location that Arjun, he can see most people who have arrayed there on the battlefield, on the side of Kauravas especially. And Arjun's eyes go on some of the personalities who are very dear to him, like Bhishma, Dronacharya. And so in this chapter, the only words that Krishna speaks are, after taking the chariot in the midst of both the armies, Krishna says, just behold, O Parth, all the Kurus assembled here. Have a look now. And then Lord Krishna is looking at Arjun to see his reaction. And at that point, Arjun loses his composure. He is attacked by so many thoughts and confusions that literally paralyze him. His mouth becomes dry, his hands start shivering. The bow in his hand, he is unable to hold steadily. Now, why so? Is it because he is afraid? No, he is a warrior of great caliber. His glories are so vast, and Arjun was a very great warrior. So it's not out of cowardice that he felt he started manifesting these symptoms. It was because some deep emotions were churned within his heart. So he lost his composure. Now, again, the background of Mahabharata, it really helps understand why Arjun went through these emotions. But still, if somebody doesn't understand, that's perfectly okay. Because the message that Lord Krishna is going to speak, second chapter onward, that is a universal message, and that is relevant for all of us. So, first chapter, Arjun speaks everything. Then, when the second chapter begins, the first verse, Sanjay is speaking to Dhritarashtra. Sanjay says to Dhritarashtra, basically, Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Sanjay and Dhritarashtra. That's the outermost conversation. And within that conversation, there's an inner conversation that is between Krishna and Arjun. So Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra that this is the conversation that happened between Krishna and Arjun. Now, who is Sanjay? Who is Dhritarashtra? If somebody doesn't know, that's perfectly okay. Now, second chapter, the first verse, Sanjay says to Dhritarashtra, Tam tatha kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam vishedantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. So, at the end of first chapter, Arjun concluded saying to Krishna, Oh Govinda, I am not going to fight this battle. And Sanjay is saying, while saying these words, Arjun was filled with tears. And now, verses 2 and 3, Krishna speaks. So, verses 2 and 3, Krishna just gives a small pep talk, saying to Arjuna, Come on, Arjun, speak like a man. These kind of words don't suit you. Come on, pick up your bow and fight the battle. Don't speak like a man who has lost his potency. So Lord Krishna, he makes some friendly taunts to Arjun, more like a friend. Lord Krishna yet doesn't, at this point, he hasn't yet started speaking the Bhagavad Gita. He hasn't started giving his instructions. Then, so second chapter, verses 2 and 3, Lord Krishna speaks a few words, but that's more like a small pep talk or just more like a friendly advice to Arjun. Not even an advice, it's more like a friendly taunt. Then in verse 2.7, in verses 4, 5, 6, Arjun gives some more arguments. And in 2.7, he actually completely breaks down and he says, "My dear Lord Krishna, I am a soul surrendered to you. Please accept me as your disciple and please instruct me. Please tell me for sure what is best for me. I am unable to ascertain myself what is best for me." And then Arjun says in 2.8, I see no means to drive away this grief. So these are symptoms of total depression. Even in modern times, those who go under depression, who may get suicidal thoughts, and who may actually go ahead and commit suicide, they also go through such experiences. They find no means to drive away the grief they are feeling within. And Arjun was in such a position. But he made a wonderful decision by taking shelter of Lord Krishna. And then in verse 2.10, again Sanjay speaks to Dhritarashtra. Tam uvacha Hrishikeshah prahasaniva bharata senayorubhayor madhye vishetantam idam vachah. At that time, smiling amidst both the armies, Lord Krishna, Lord Rishikesh spoke the following words. Can you imagine a battle, a huge battle is about to start, and Lord Krishna is smiling there. And from verse 2.11, the actual Bhagavad Gita starts. So if someone ever asks you this quiz question, in which what's the exact verse in the Bhagavad Gita from where the actual teachings of the Bhagavad Gita begin? So that is verse 2.11. Okay. Now, what does the Gita, the instructive part of Bhagavad Gita, begin with? The very first word that Lord Krishna speaks in his instructive part of the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna had spoken a few words in the first chapter. He had spoken a few words in the second chapter's verses 2nd and 3rd as well. But the actual instructive words of the Gita begin from verse 2.11. And the very first word of that verse is Ashocyan, which in one sense translates to don't worry. Technically, the translation is it's not worth worrying about. So, seen in another angle, it basically means don't worry. So, the very first words of Lord Krishna are don't worry. And interestingly, the last instructive verse of the Bhagavad Gita, as we discussed, there are 18 chapters in the Gita. And in the 18th chapter, the last instructive verse is 18.66. And after 18.66 also, Lord Krishna, of course, he speaks, but those are not instructive words. Lord Krishna asks Arjun, have you carefully heard, O Arjun, what I have spoken? And to this Arjun replies, yes, my Lord. Nashto moha smritir labdva. Karishye vachanam tava. Yes, all my illusion has been dispelled by your beautiful words. And my equanimity, my memory has been re-established. And now I am ready to pick up my bow and fight the battle. So, and this last verse, 18.66, that verse ends with Ma Shuchah, which again means don't worry. So can you imagine the very first words of Bhagavad Gita are don't worry, and the last words as well are don't worry. Ma Shuchah technically also translates to don't worry. Now, both these don't worry messages, they have something deep for us. They mean something deep for us. Now, can you just imagine this? When some influential person in this world who is an authoritative figure, whose words matter a lot, comes and says to us, don't worry. How, what a relief it would be for someone, isn't it? Say, for example, somebody who works for Meta, if Meta or Facebook, suppose Mark Zuckerberg comes and says, don't worry, your job is secure. Nothing will happen to you. What a relief it would be to any employee. Suppose employees are under the stress of being laid off due to some upheavals in the economy. What a relief it would be to hear from the CEO, don't worry, your job is secure. So now what to speak of the don't worry message of Lord Krishna, in front of whom all the big CEOs and emperors who have come in the past, they are tiny in front of him. So how much more soothing would be the don't worry message of Lord Krishna. So the first don't worry message of Lord Krishna is related to this broader concept of self-realization, which means who are we? And realizing our true identity and crafting our life based on that. And the second don't worry message is based on God realization. Who is God? Is there a God at all? And who is God? And what is my connection with God? These are all topics that come under God realization. And both self-realization and God realization go parallelly together, and both are important. So self-realization answers for us, who am I? But merely self-realization, it's not complete. Merely having just an answer to who am I? Well, I am something beyond a bunch of chemicals, but in connection with what do I exist? What is the higher reality in connection with which I exist? So God realization completes that understanding. So, and God realization also, yes, we certainly need understanding about God, but we also need self-realization along with God realization, because self-realization tells us who are we in connection with God and what is our eternal connection with God. So both these processes, self-realization and God realization, go parallelly together. So in the Bhagavad Gita, 2.11, Lord Krishna began instructing Arjun, and the very first instruction was Ashocyan. Krishna is saying to Arjun, while speaking, while apparently speaking learned words, you are lamenting for what is not worthy of worrying. So, and then from verse 2.11 to verse 2.30, not 1.3. Right now, what we are seeing on the screen is 1.3, but until 2.30, Lord Krishna speaks on one common theme, and that theme is who we are. That is self-realization. Now let's see this beautiful verse from second chapter, 13th verse. The verse is, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara तथा देहांतर प्राप्तिर धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते. Please read the translation with me. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So now here we start getting an answer to who we really are. So we saw that most of us may be in our youth, some of us a little beyond this youth, beyond this stage. So we see this man with mustache in the middle. Some of us may be on his left side, some of us may be on his right side. And of course, this doesn't just hold true for men, it's for women as well. So, but still, when we look at our wherever we may be currently, when we look at our childhood picture, we say, that's me. This is how I looked in my childhood. Who is that real me? All the bodily cells have changed. Everything has been flushed out. So that real me is the Atma, hmm, or the soul or the spirit. Hmm. And that is what is unchanging throughout all these changes. And Lord Krishna goes on to say that the soul, it's the same soul, not just in this one particular lifetime. At death, the soul completely discards this body. Actually, at every moment, we are shedding off some part of our body. Older cells are getting replenished. We are growing day by day. We grow from boyhood to youth to old age. And then beyond old age, actually the whole body gets discarded, and the soul moves into another body. And Krishna is saying a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. My God, what kind of a sober person would that be? It really requires some very deep spiritual realization to come to this level where one is not bewildered by these changes. Of course, this doesn't mean one becomes callous toward somebody's passing away. No, that's not what this is meant to convey. But a sober person is learns to accept these changes, and is not bewildered by them. And a sober person learns to go beyond these changes, learns to go even beyond birth and death, to a higher realm. What is that higher realm? That will be uncovered soon in this course. Now, this is a very nice, interesting verse, 2.22. Again, a part of that same section. From verse 2.11 to 2.30. It's one section, one common theme. This is a beautiful verse. It is said, I have just heard some online articles also say that this particular verse 2.22, it's carved inside the pyramids of Egypt. And the verse goes as, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Beautiful verse and so relevant, and no doubt, I don't see why it's impossible that such a verse could be inscribed inside the pyramids of Egypt. The Bhagavad Gita is definitely older than the pyramids of Egypt. The Gita was spoken around 5,000 years old ago, and the pyramids of Egypt, from what I understand, were built roughly 2.5 to 3,000 years ago. And the Vedic culture was quite widespread all over the world that time. So yeah, it's not impossible that this beautiful verse from the Gita could be inscribed inside the pyramids of Egypt. But again, I don't know with certainty that it is true unless we go and see the pyramids of Egypt or somebody shares some pictures with us. Another verse. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, or withered by the wind. Basically, the soul is changeless. The soul cannot be destroyed with the time factor. Time is quite an interesting phenomenon. Yeah, a common understanding of time is what time it is right now, say 3 p.m. Another understanding of time is how much time we have. Come on, get ready. We just have 10 minutes left. That is another conception of time we have. And a third and a grander conception of time a bigger or more cosmic conception of time is it's an unseen and uh, godlike force that's bringing about all things to destruction, that's moving all things, that's making all phenomena happen, moving all things and uh, making things and living beings go through these phases of creation, maintenance, destruction. That's the time factor. But here, Krishna is saying the soul is beyond time. Uh, Even if a nuclear missile falls directly right on top of our head, the body will certainly be destroyed, but nothing will happen to the soul. So, that's the nature of the soul. Now, we discussed some verses from the Gita, but somebody may challengingly ask, should I just blindly accept all this? No, I'm a scientific person. Okay, then in that case, let's see some um, examples from science, some scientific studies. So we are going to see reincarnation case studies. That's one. Then second field is out of body or near death experiences. It's another field altogether. And thirdly, we are going to see some simple intuition, logic, and common sense that can explain the existence of the soul. So first, reincarnation case studies. So a typical reincarnation case study is, just a second. So for reincarnation case studies, a typical reincarnation case study, it involves very strong past memories from past life, and anybody who studies it with an unbiased motive will see a strong connection that, oh yes, this is certainly a past life case. These are past life memories, and these are not just some made up stories. In fact, there's one researcher, Dr. Ian Stevenson. He is no more, I think. He has documented many such cases, and he has thoroughly researched them. From what I know, he has documented around 2,000 cases. Of course, a man of his stature has received many, many more applications than 2,000, but many times there are fake cases also where somebody is just feigning as if he or she remembers some things from past life. And then when there's no substantial proof that it is a past life case study, then such cases are rejected. So even with such stringent requirements, Ian Stevenson has managed to document so many cases, hundreds of cases. And today we'll watch, in fact, before we come to our video, one of my teachers in Mumbai, spiritual teachers, he knows a boy, a young man now, who was a reincarnation case study of Ian Stevenson. And that young gentleman's name is Deep Kapadia, I think. He also, as a 3-year-old boy who was born in Mumbai, he was bringing up memories of some place in Rajasthan where he was a watchman, and how he had a home there and the town in which he used to live. And parents were just worried and confused. What's he talking about? And then someone told them that, oh, maybe he's recalling his past life. And then they wanted to make sure and confirm this. So even Ian Stevenson was involved in this case. He and his assistant, Satwan Pasricha, I think, his student basically. So they both thoroughly studied this case, and it was actually found out he did come from one of the villages in Rajasthan. In fact, they even thoroughly tested him. So they went to this place in Rajasthan with a train, and intentionally they gave him wrong pointers. Okay, so now 3 stations from now, our destination is going to come. So the young boy, 3-year-old boy, he just said, no, it's not 3 stations, it's next station. So everyone was so amazed seeing his memory of his past life. And yeah, later on it was found out that, yeah, he was indeed a watchman in one museum, and he was murdered in his past life. So yeah, he had some strong connection with his past life, an unfulfilled ending, or for some reason he carried over those memories. And yeah, this is one such genuine case. And now we are going to see a video of one fighter pilot from World War II. His name was James, and let's see who James came as in his next life. Okay, we'll just watch 10 minutes of this video.
Once again, Charles Gibson.
And now, one of the biggest questions of life. What happens when it's over? Heaven? Hell? Nothing? Or might there be a fourth possibility, reincarnation? Could we come back as someone else? Here's Chris Cuomo with 2 down-to-earth parents who thought they understood the mysteries of life. That is, until their toddler began to talk.
On March 3rd, 1945, a 21-year-old Navy fighter pilot on a mission over the Pacific was shot down by Japanese artillery. His name might well have been forgotten, were it not for the remarkable, some might say unbelievable story of a little boy named James.
Okay, this is really tough. I need somebody to help me.
All right, I'm the volunteer. What do you want me to do?
Okay, I'll just go climb this thing, and you have to hold me in case I fall.
Done.
James Leiniger is all boy, 6 years old and full of spirit.
This is a special plane. It goes in reverse. You don't see a lot of that.
James knows a lot about planes, especially war planes.
What kind of airplane is that?
To Corsair.
His parents, Andrea and Bruce Leiniger, say from an early age James would play with nothing else.
He was obsessed with airplanes. If you look around the house, that's all you'll see. Airplanes, helicopters, aircraft carriers.
But then, when he was 2, the planes James loved suddenly began to give him frequent and frightening nightmares.
I'd wake him up and he'd be screaming, and he'd always be laying on his back, kicking his feet up at the ceiling. And I'd say, baby, what were you dreaming about? And he'd say, airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out.
They sound like typical kiddie nightmares, but Andrea says they went on the same way for months. Maybe too much TV. But James was just 2, and his parents say only watching Barney and Teletubbies.
Teletubbies!
And Andrea and Bruce say they weren't watching World War II documentaries or conversing about military history.
This is an F-18?
No, that one.
So what explains the nightmares and James's strange obsession with airplanes?
I talked to my mom about it
2 bombs in.
a lot of times. My mom had said maybe he's remembering a past life.
What did you say?
Politely, baloney.
Andrea and Bruce of Lafayette, Louisiana are a highly educated, modern couple. To them, the possibility that their little son James was manifesting signs of a former life was, well, a little out there.
You know, having a past life is not the initial conclusion that you come to. You try and figure out any other way he could have. Did he see anything? Has there been anything on television, anything that we've discussed?
But as time went by, Andrea didn't know what to believe. Here's James at age 3, going over a plane as if he's doing a pre-flight check. He would continue to say and do things that were puzzling, like the time his mom bought him a toy airplane.
And I said, oh, look, there's a bomb on the bottom of it. He said, that's not a bomb, Mama, that's a drop tank.
A drop tank?
I'd never heard of a drop tank. I didn't know what a drop tank was.
Andrea's mother suggested she look into the work of counselor and therapist Carol Bowman. Bowman has written 2 books, both supporting the proposition that sometimes the dead can be reborn.
We are taught from a very early age in this culture, in the Judeo-Christian culture, that reincarnation doesn't exist. Once you observe this in a child, and the evidence is very compelling, you have to open up to another explanation for what is going on.
Bruce was
So this lady who just spoke, she was saying that in Judeo-Christian culture, in Judaism and in Christianity, there's nothing called reincarnation. So naturally, those who grow up in this culture, either in Judaism or Christianity, if they follow their culture, then naturally they would be biased toward rejecting reincarnation. But still, this particular case, it points out toward the existence of reincarnation, and we will see the transformation that happens in this man who is James's father.
Deeply skeptical.
He said there has to be a logical explanation.
I don't believe in past lives. I don't believe in this stuff.
But with the violent nightmares recurring 3 and 4 times a week, the Leinigers felt they had to do something. So with guidance from Bowman, they cautiously began to encourage James to share his memories. They say the result was startling.
The nightmares immediately started reducing in frequency. He went down from 3 or 4 times a week to maybe 1 a week, 1 every other week. And at that point was when he started to articulate more about these past life memories.
Seems normal enough, a little boy improving when his troubles are directly addressed. But Bowman says this is more, that James was forthcoming because this is the age when former lives are most easily recalled.
They haven't had the cultural conditioning, the layering over of experience in this life, so that the memories can percolate up more easily. These memories tend to fade between the ages of 5 to 7.
His parents say between the ages of 2 and 4, James would reveal extraordinary details about the life of a former fighter pilot, mostly at bedtime, when he was drowsy.
Bruce said, what happened to your plane? He said, it crashed on fire. And Bruce said, why did your airplane crash? And he said, it got shot. And Bruce said, well, who shot your plane? And I'll never forget the look on his face. He went, oh, the Japanese.
Still, despite these extraordinary stories, Bruce remained dubious. Almost to prove they couldn't be true, he began to piece together the details James was sharing. And what he found, he says, shook him to the core. For in many instances, the stories appeared to match the facts. James seemed to be recalling real events, real people, in the life of a man who had been dead for almost 60 years.
Coming up, a toddler, just 3 years old. So how does he know the pilots from a World War II squadron?
It was like, holy mackerel. You could have poured my brains out of my ears. I just couldn't believe it.
When Prime Time continues.
With each passing month, little James Leiniger seemed to be peeling back memories of a past life.
Ooh, hey.
Vivid memories that scared and astonished his parents.
Bruce had always said, what kind of plane did you fly? And he said, a Corsair.
Yeah.
He said a Corsair?
He said the word Corsair.
Not only did James remember flying a Corsair, he demonstrated knowledge of the plane's peculiarities, like the time he was flipping through a book about planes when he was 4.
And he got to the Corsair, and he said, that's a Corsair. And he goes, you know what? They used to get flat tires all the time.
In fact, historians and pilots agree that the plane's tires took a lot of punishment on landing. Of course, this is a fact that could easily be found in books or on TV. But then, James began to offer up the kinds of specific details his parents say are harder to explain away.
Another night, Bruce had come in and he said, do you remember where your plane took off? And he said it took off of a boat. Do you remember the name of your boat? Natoma. Do you remember what your name was? And he'd always say, James. His name is James. It never really occurred to us. We thought he just wasn't understanding the question. So I said, do you remember any friends or anyone else that you flew with? And he said, Jack Larson.
Bruce began doing some research. Almost immediately, he discovered that the Natoma was an actual ship, a small aircraft carrier in the Pacific called the Natoma Bay. And Jack Larson, the Navy buddy little James recalled? Well, it turns out there was a pilot named Jack Larson who served aboard the Natoma Bay. In fact, he's alive and well and living in Arkansas.
And it was like, holy mackerel. I mean, really, you could have poured my brains out of my ears. And I just couldn't believe it.
And there were more clues. Around this time, James began signing crayon drawings and other artwork, James 3.
One day I asked him why he's calling himself James 3. Well, it's because I'm the third James. And every once in a while you ask him that today, and he'll still say the same thing.
And one day, while leafing through a new book about the Battle of Iwo Jima, Bruce turned to an aerial photo of the Pacific Island. James was seated nearby.
He pointed to it and he goes, Daddy, that's where my airplane was shot down. And I said, what? That's my airplane got shot down there, Daddy. And I just went, blank. I couldn't say anything.
By then, Bruce had become a man possessed, searching the internet, combing through military records, and interviewing men who served aboard the Natoma Bay. Finally, a breakthrough. He learned that there was just one pilot from the squadron killed at Iwo Jima. That pilot, James M. Houston Jr. Is this why little James was calling himself James 3?
It just crystallized in my mind. This has to be who we're talking about. You know, my meter of skepticism was starting to go over toward belief.
When little James would describe being shot down, he told of how his plane had sustained a direct hit on the engine.
We had an airplane, and I said, well, can you show me where it was? And he pointed right up to the front of the engine.
That's what makes this man's story so intriguing. His name is Ralph Klarber. Klarber was a rear gunner on a TBM Avenger that flew off the Natoma Bay. On March 3rd, 1945, he took part in a raid near Iwo Jima. As it happens, Klarber's plane was right next to the one flown by James M. Houston Jr. It was to be Hugh's last mission before leaving for home the following day. As Klarber recalls, the sky was thick with enemy flak.
We experienced pretty heavy anti-aircraft fire, but this was the most intense that I experienced at any time.
Suddenly, a flash near the nose of Houston's plane.
I saw the hit. I would say he was hit head-on, yeah, right on the middle of the engine.
Just as little James had described it.
So what do you believe now about your son James?
I believe that he had a past life. I believe that in his past life he was James M. Houston Jr. And he came back because he wasn't finished with something. And that's essentially what I believe.
Dear Bruce and Andrea.
And he's not the only one. This past October, the Leinegers received a letter from a woman named Ann Barron, the sister of pilot James Houston.
Okay, we'll stop the video here. But basically, they are showing more and more evidences. So far, we saw how the father of little James Leineger, I think his name is Bruce, right? Bruce was so skeptic, almost on the side of being cynical about it. But now his meter of skepticism moved to the side of belief that yes, his son did indeed have a past life. And yeah, next in the video, they show this old lady. This old lady, she is the sister of James Houston, who was the fighter pilot in World War II. So James Houston, he was born as James Leineger. So that's the story, essentially. Okay, and yeah, something more here from Bruce, the father of James.
I was not just skeptical, I was adamant that this was not happening in my house. And my belief system rebelled against the concept and the idea of reincarnation and past lives.
And now, one of the biggest questions of life.
Yeah, same thing essentially. But just for this initial testimonial that Bruce gives, we wanted to bring up this video. Now back to our presentation. Okay, so here we saw the video of James. Now moving on. Now someone may say, okay, well, James remembers his past life. Deep Kapadia may remember his past life, but I don't remember all this. So yeah, all this is false because I don't remember it. Now, that's a very superficial argument if we see. Just because something is not happening to me doesn't mean it's untrue. So there's one interesting statement made by a wise man. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Wonderfully put, no? When there's no evidence about something, that doesn't naturally imply that that thing doesn't exist. So absence of evidence doesn't imply evidence of absence. So yeah, just because it doesn't happen just because I don't remember doesn't mean all this is false. At least if there are some people who remember, that means, yeah, there is reality to this. It's not just some myth. It's not just some fiction. Then the philosophical question may come up. Then why doesn't everyone remember their past life? So the answer to this, based on scriptures, is it's a benevolent arrangement of nature and of higher powers that we don't remember our past lives. Imagine I move from my current apartment to a new apartment, but in my mind is still absorbed in the map of the current apartment. And in my mind, I'm still thinking I'm in my current apartment. What do you think will happen to me? Wherever I'm trying to walk, I may hit into walls. Thinking that this is a door, I may try to walk into it, but I'll end up hitting into a wall. It will be such a confused existence, isn't it? So similarly, if a soul identifies with, besides the current body, if the soul is also identifying with another body from one of the past lives, then, well, the soul could be confused about its existence in this world, and one will not be able to function properly in life. So actually, it's a benevolent arrangement of nature and of higher powers. Now, of course, at this stage, we still haven't discussed why at all is the soul taking births and dying again and again. Why at all is the soul caught up in this samsara chakra, cycle of birth and death? That's a higher level topic. It will be discussed in future sessions. And now someone may ask this question, okay, then why do some people remember? There's no clear-cut answer to this because there could be a multitude of reasons. Like in the case of James, we saw his own father, Bruce, said that, yeah, he probably remembers his past life because he wasn't finished with something. So yeah, and wasn't finished with something, that could be one generic answer we can give. But then, yeah, we don't know. In specific cases of different individual souls, what is it that they were not finished with? So yeah, there could be a multitude of reasons, and we cannot pinpoint exactly, oh, this is the case. So, and in certain cases, yeah, it may just be by the, usually by the benevolent arrangement of higher powers, one forgets one's past life. But in some cases, remembering the past life may be a benevolent arrangement of the higher powers. So yeah, we really cannot exactly pinpoint why do some people remember. But whatever cases we do see, they certainly point out toward the existence of the Atma. So this was reincarnation. Next set of scientific evidences we will see are out-of-body or near-death experiences. So a typical near-death experience involves, say, somebody being operated upon. Yeah, in summary, near-death experience means the soul temporarily leaves the body and the body lies there almost like it's dead. But yet the soul is not done with this body. The soul comes back after some time, and then the person wakes up as if the person was alive all this while. So this field was first noticed by, this field of studies began with this particular cardiologist. His name was Dr. Michael Sabom. So in one particular hospital, a patient went through a heart surgery. This was the very first case from, if I'm not wrong. The patient went through a heart surgery, and it was a very critical surgery with the a high risk of even dying in that surgery. But somehow the patient survived, and later on, when the patient was back into normal consciousness, the patient recounted what all he or she saw around the hospital. And that left everyone around spellbound, and they were mystified. And what was it? The patient was describing how in front of the hospital there's a nice oak tree. Now, naturally, the first conclusion, nobody jumps to a mystical conclusion just based on this. The first few thoughts that people have based on empiricism are, okay, well, this patient, while being rushed to the hospital, must have noticed the oak tree in front of the hospital. Okay, fine. So mentioning the presence of an oak tree in front of the hospital, it's not really a strong evidence of anything paranormal happening here. So then this patient goes on to say, this hospital has a terrace, and there are many old things in the terrace. I visited the terrace. The patient is saying, imagine, the patient was never taken to the terrace, but the patient is claiming, I went to the terrace. And well, then they asked for some more descriptions of what he saw on the terrace. So the patient recounted, as soon as you enter the terrace, on the left side, you see a torn pair of shoes. On the right side, you see something. He mentioned something. You can make up some other object. And he described a few items on the terrace. And they were shocked. And they wanted to verify it. In that particular hospital, the terrace was hardly opened. Hardly once in 6 months or so, they opened the terrace just for some routine maintenance. But all the time, they kept it locked. Why? Because for fear that some patients may want to go and commit suicide by jumping from the terrace. So, yeah, the terrace was always locked. So now, the crew members in this hospital, they wanted to verify the claims of this patient. They actually took the terrace key, unlocked it, went on the terrace, and they exactly saw what the patient was describing. Torn pair of shoes on one side and something on another side, something else here, something else there. They exactly saw what the patient was describing. That led to this field of studies called out-of-body or near-death experiences. So even in ISKCON, we have one particular case where one sannyasi was being operated, and he was totally in a state of coma while being operated. He was given strong anesthesia and he had no consciousness at all. But yet, after the operation was done, the sannyasi, he kind of on a lighter note, he pointed out to the surgeons that, doctor, the operation theater is not a place to discuss golf. The doctors were shocked. How does he know we were talking about golf? Yeah, because the sannyasi, he was completely, he was on anesthesia and he had no consciousness. But still, he heard the talks of the doctors. So, yeah, this is also, and later on, as the sannyasi recounted, how he was conscious of himself being operated and he was watching himself being operated from top somewhere. So this was another out-of-body experience. Now, some simple intuition, logic, and common sense can also tell us how, we are something beyond this body. We are the soul. We are the Atma. Suppose one of your friends is traveling in a very expensive car, say Ferrari or Tesla, and that car meets with an accident. Who would you save first if there's a chance of? Now, after an accident, both the car as well as the person inside the car need some attention. They need some servicing. The car also needs some servicing, and the human beings inside also need some servicing. So who would you give first attention to? It's quite obvious, right? We would first want to save our friend. Now, isn't that ironical? Some analysis has been proposed in connection with this. Our body, with all its flesh and blood and everything taken together, if we disintegrate it into its individual components or individual elements, like this much amount of phosphorus, this much amount of oxygen, this much amount of carbon, based on individual elements, if we separate out all the substances that make up our body, those substances, okay, let's say not even individual elements, even if, say, we separate it out into different compounds, still the value of those compounds and elements, it's hardly $5-10. That's the analysis I had heard around 10 years back. Now with inflation, you can assume some increase in that, in the price of all these chemicals and compounds. So the value of the body is hardly just the value of the compounds and chemicals. It's hardly $10 or so. But yet what's the value of a Ferrari car or a Tesla car? Much more than that, right? But still, we first save our friend and not the car. Why? Because there's a living force in that human body. There's an Atma living in that body. And the value of the Atma is much higher than dead matter. So now, on the other hand, if someone meets with an accident and dies on the spot, now if we see, we won't prioritize saving the dead body. The dead body anyways is garbage. The dead body doesn't have so much value. Sorry to use a heavy word, garbage, but that's what the dead body is disposed of. Just like garbage is disposed of. In different cultures, it may be done differently. But in essence, the body does not have much value. Then one will try to save the car because anyways, the person inside is no more. Then, in our language, we use words like he or she has left us. Who has left us? The body is still there, but still we say chhod ke chale gaye. In different languages, if we combine, if we put together the words used in different languages, it's more or less along these lines. He or she has left us. Chhod ke chale gaye. What does it mean? Who has left us? It's the real person who has left us, not the body. If the person was just that body, then, well, we are already so scientifically advanced. Why can't we, maybe if our existence is all about just some chemicals, then, why not trigger some reverse reaction that will reverse the effect of death and make that person alive again? Nobody has invented anything like that. Why? Because once the soul has left the body cannot be animated again. No matter what you try to do, trying to start the bodily actions and reactions again, there's nothing in our power that can help a person come back to life. Then there's a wonderful experiment performed by one Dr. Penfield. I think he was a neurosurgeon or a neurologist. You may feel free to search. So he performed an interesting experiment. So in this experiment, Dr. Penfield, he put some brain stimulators on the head of on the skull of a living man. And of course, they were not harmful, not much side effect. So in the first instance of this experiment, Dr. Penfield asked this patient to lift his hand up. Okay, the patient lifted his hand up. And when that hand was lifted up, some signals that are triggered in the brain. Ultimately, it's the brain who gives within the body, in the physical manifestation of the body, it's the brain that gives directions to all other bodily parts. Do this, do that. But of course, we are going to see beyond the brain, also we have some existence. We will be seeing how we have a subtle body, and then beyond the subtle body is the Atma. So, okay, but at physical level, it's the brain that gives directions to the various bodily parts. And this man lifted his hand up, and whatever signals that are generated in the brain when such an action is performed, those were noted down. Those signals were recorded. And second time, Dr. Penfield externally induced those signals. And he stimulated the brain with some machines put on top of that patient's skull, and he stimulated those signals externally, and the hand went up in a similar fashion. And now comes the interesting philosophical part of this. This patient was asked, in the first instance, the patient was asked, what happened? The patient said, I put my hand up. And in the second instance, when the patient was asked what happened, the patient said, my hand went up. Then he was clearly asked the question again, did you put your hand up? The patient said, no, my hand went up. What does this mean? Who is it that in the first case put his hand up, and in the second case is not willing to take responsibility for having put the hand up? So who is that real I that this patient was identifying with? In the first case, he said, yes, I did it. In the second case, no, my hand just went up. So in the first case, the patient is identifying with someone who voluntarily, out of his own volition, made the choice to put the hand up. But in the second case, he says, no, my hand just went up. So what does this indicate? Who is that real you? Who is the real me? Who is the real him? And who is the real her? It's the Atma. Okay, back to our PowerPoint presentation. Dr. Penfield's experiment. Then there's one beautiful song, Bhaja Govindam, glorifying Lord Krishna. This song marvels at one particular phenomenon. It says, Yavat pavano nivasati dehe, tavat prichhati kushalam gehe, gatavati vayo deha paye, bharya bibhyati tasmin kaye. So bharya in Sanskrit means wife. So in this song, this particular stanza, it is marveling at this particular phenomenon. What is that phenomenon? That when, say for example, a man dies, when the soul leaves the body, when the man dies, the wife who was earlier so attached to the husband and who would have otherwise driven away people just so that she can spend private time with her husband, now she doesn't want to touch that body. She no more identifies with it. She is afraid to be with this body. She wants other people to be with her when the dead body of her husband is lying in front of her. At other times, she would want to be in privacy with her husband when her husband was alive. So, isn't this worth marveling at? If her husband's existence only comprised of the body, then, well, the body is still there. But she doesn't want to be with that dead body. She wants to be with her living husband. What is it that makes that difference? Sometimes it is thought that we have a soul, and that soul is like a battery that charges us. And as soon as the soul leaves, the battery is over, or the machine stops. But no, the scriptures are pointing to us that no, we don't have a soul. We are the soul. The real me, the real you, the real him, and the real her. Who is that? It's the soul. It's not that we are the body and we have a soul. We are that soul. So that's what the scriptures emphatically point out. Now, what's the practical benefit of this knowledge? This knowledge of self-realization, it helps us stay equipoised. In this world, we may lose so many things at external level. Our stocks may be lost. We may lose this, we may lose that. But when we are fixed in this Atma Gyan, that I am not this body, I am the soul, then we don't feel lost. Because we are fixed in a higher understanding. We cling on to a higher reality. We develop freedom from superiority or inferiority complex over bodily appearance. Oh, I look so good. I look better than him. Oh, I don't look as good as her. Superiority or inferiority complex. Both of these, they causes disturbance actually. Inferiority complex certainly causes disturbance. But how does superiority complex cause disturbance? Yes, it also causes disturbance because the higher we feel we are, when the reality strikes, the harder we fall. When old age may start setting in. Somebody who feels so much superiority complex over some external bodily appearance feels much more disturbance than someone who has had a sober outlook toward life and toward bodily appearance and so on. Then third, we don't take petty offenses very seriously. Why? Because we realize that, yeah, even if somebody may end up stepping on my leg, what's the big deal? We don't take petty offenses seriously. Or in fact, even big insults can be easily processed by a person who is fixed in Atma Gyan. Why? Because such a person is clinging on to a higher reality. I am not this body, and neither am I this mind. In our next session, we will be discussing how the Atma is even different from the mind. And usually offenses and insults are either toward the physical body or toward the person's mentality or way of thinking and one's mind, intelligence, and so on. But when we become fixed in Atma Gyan, we identify with the Atma, that is who we actually are. Then we can stay unperturbed amidst fast-moving external circumstances. Now, who all like the beautiful full moon? I personally like watching the full moon. It looks so beautiful, a bright object in the sky. Now, there's one analogy given by great saints. Sometimes when there are clouds in the sky, and clouds are usually in a motion, they keep moving. So these clouds, they sometimes hide the full moon and sometimes expose it. But the full moon is stationary in its position. But in relative to that, the clouds are moving. Now, of course, in this analogy, please keep aside the thought that the moon is also gradually moving slowly. For now, keep aside the movements of the moon. In comparison to clouds, of course, the moon is pretty much stationary. So in this example, let's consider the moon is completely stationary and the clouds are moving. So sometimes the moon gets covered, sometimes it gets exposed. Now, our eyes could create an optical illusion that the moon is also moving. But actually, the moon is not moving, it's stationary. And somebody who carefully observes the moon will go beyond this optical illusion and will be able to understand, okay, yeah, it's not the moon is not moving at all. It's the clouds that are moving, and they are creating an impression that the moon is also moving. Now, what does this analogy mean for us? It means if we identify ourselves as the Atma, if we dive into Atma Gyan, we are not perturbed by fast moving external circumstances. When we too deeply identify with all the moving circumstances around us, all the changing fashions, changing technologies, for those who are software engineers, yeah, it causes disturbance, right? When everything around is so changing, any technology that we may pick up, we may become expert at, soon it's going to get outdated. It causes anxiety. But when somebody who's fixed in Atma Gyan will not be perturbed by moving circumstances. Now in our session, we watched this small video. It's a beautiful video, recitation of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, this is an audio book based on Bhagavad Gita as it is. I'll include it along with this video recording. So yeah, I'll send you a recording of this as well. And now we'll end our session with some beautiful classic examples of personalities who are self-realized. First example, Socrates. I think he was a Greek philosopher, right? Greek or from some other region. I don't clearly remember, but a very famous personality. Do you know how Socrates died? He was killed. He was imprisoned by some envious ruler of that time, and in prison, he was given poison to drink. Hemlock, I think that poison was called. And Socrates very fearlessly and nonchalantly, he responded, "You cannot kill me because you cannot find me." So Socrates, from his behavior and his symptoms, he was a self-realized soul. He had realized himself as being beyond the body, as being the Atma. Now, here we have some even more advanced examples. Does someone remember a boy whose stories have been mentioned in the Vedic scriptures? And that boy was tortured. Literally, so many attempts were made to kill him. But he was completely fearless. In fact, his own father tried to kill him multiple times. Now, I guess you must have found the answer. If not, here's one more hint. We celebrate the holy fire. And next day, we celebrate Holi with colors. Basically, the fire that we light up during Holi, it's in commemoration of this particular boy. And who is that? It's the great devotee Prahlad. Prahlad was self-realized, certainly, but beyond that, he was even God-realized. He had realized his connection with God. And in modern times, hardly around 500 years ago, there was a great saint called Haridas Thakur. He too was self-realized as well as God-realized. He was born in a Muslim family, but he developed a natural attraction toward Lord Krishna. So he would constantly keep chanting Lord Krishna's holy name. And at one point, one very envious ruler, that time India was under Muslim rule. There were so many Muslim kings spread out all across India. and centrally governed by the Delhi Sultanate. So this happened in Bengal somewhere, and there was a Muslim ruler there. This Muslim ruler summoned Haridas Thakur, and he said, "Oh Haridas, why don't you stop this chanting? You were born a Muslim. You should read namaz and stop all this chanting of Hindu gods. What is this?" So Haridas Thakur very fearlessly responded, he who you call by the name Allah, I call that same supreme divine reality with a more intimate and a deeper feeling. We call that same supreme divinity as Krishna. So yeah, why are you differentiating? Why are you holding on to this sectarian conception? Then the Muslim ruler, he said, okay, fine, you continue chanting, but at least don't chant loudly. Go to some secret hideout place and you chant there. Don't let anyone around know that you are chanting all this. Then Haridas Thakur, he fearlessly said, well, when the chanting of God's name is all auspicious, why should I, when so many materialistic activities are performed pompously and openly, why should an auspicious activity be done in a secret hideout place? Then that Muslim ruler, he was angry. He wanted to punish Haridas Thakur. He said, if you don't follow this order, you will be killed, Haridas. We will put you to death. We will punish you to death. Haridas Thakur fearlessly said, even if you cut my body into millions of pieces, every piece of my body will resoundingly vibrate the name of God. And then it was decided that Haridas Thakur will be put to death. He'll be punished to death. And he was given this punishment that strong men will beat him up with whips. They'll take him to different marketplaces and go on continuously beating him from day throughout the day. They'll keep beating him. Some criminals were given such punishments, usually after 2 or 3 marketplaces of being beaten with strong whips and being kicked by these very strong men who were like hulks. Any person would die. But Haridas Thakur, he was taken through 22 marketplaces. Not 2, 3, 4, 5, 22. And yet nothing happened to him. Even while he was being beaten, he was fearlessly chanting the holy names of God. And after beating him in 22 marketplaces, these men, they themselves were tired and literally drained of all energy. And they approached Haridas Thakur. They begged him piteously. They said, oh Haridas Thakur, we think you are a great soul. Therefore, we are unable to kill you. But please forgive us. But you're living, if we are unable to kill you, the king will kill us. The king will punish us severely. So Haridas Thakur said, oh, my being alive will cause you trouble? Okay, then I'll die. And Haridas Thakur, he just sat there fearlessly and he left his body out of his own volition. He left his body. He, the real soul, left the body. And all symptoms of life vanished from that body. It appeared like it was a dead body. And these men, they were happy. They took the dead body to the king, showed him, see, we have succeeded. The king said, okay, now dispose of this body appropriately. So they were considering how to dispose it of. And they were thinking, oh, he was a Muslim, but he turned toward another path, which is lower than our path. So he shouldn't be buried, otherwise he'll get Jannat. So no, don't bury him. He doesn't deserve a burial like a proper Muslim gets. So then they were considering, okay, then maybe let's burn his body like the Hindus do. And then some Hindus who were proud and who had superficial idea of spirituality, whose conception was that it is one's birth that determines one's spiritual advancement. They were saying, no, he doesn't deserve being cremated. So then, so instead of getting into all these logistics, they decided, let's just dispose of his body by putting it into a river, a flowing river. So they just put his body into a flowing river. The apparently dead corpse floated on that river for some time. And after some time, Haridas Thakur came back into the body and he arose from the dead. Literally, this is an example of arising from the dead. And guess what he does? He walks back straight to that king who had awarded him that punishment, death punishment. And that Muslim king realized his big blunder. Some good sense, good conscience in him was awakened. He realized, oh, we offended a great saint. Although he's from a different path, he's a great saint. He is worthy of our respect and honor. He fell at Haridas Thakur's feet, begged for forgiveness very piteously. And Haridas Thakur easily forgave this king who was envious earlier, but now came to his senses. So yeah, this both self-realization and God-realization, these take us to spiritual perfection. And the Bhagavad Gita is inviting us to this realm. This is the realm of oceanic happiness. And our journey through the next sessions in this course will help us dive into both self as well as God realization. Thank you so much for watching this recording. If you have any questions, please let us know. Take care. Have a nice week ahead.